Ladies and gentlemen, get the book Dr. Joshua Bowen wrote, The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. It is extremely full of knowledge and information for anyone, as well as join the Patreon. There's hundreds of videos that have been not released to the internet. You can ask questions and I will record them with these scholars in high definition. I do that all the time. You can also personal message me and you help the community grow. Thanks a lot. Dr. Joshua Bowen. I have thought about this for a long time and I thought, okay, who created math? Who came up with calculating things? And this probably goes way deep into deep history on who created mathematics and knowing counting and algebra or specific mathematics. We probably don't know when that came on the scene. But something we can ascertain is, where did writing come from? When did it pop up on the scene, and what's the best if it's a guess, when did it start? Or maybe we know. So I'm asking you, can you tell us about how writing began?
Yeah, so there's still aspects of it that are debated, and I haven't looked in detail at this in a while, so I will do my best as always. But essentially, writing, it was invented in Mesopotamia, and hoorah, we got it. Mesopotamia gets that first. Writing began in Sumer. So it started in like the second half of the fourth millennium, late fourth millennium, and we have tablets, right? We have tablets from that period. And the way that writing arguably began is that there were these small things called tokens, and they were just these little clay shapes. It looked like tokens. And they represented commodities. So there are people there's a woman by the name of Denise Schmatt-Besserat who wrote a whole book on this. Of course, it's been critiqued in particular by a guy named Paul Zemansky. But nonetheless, the main aspects of the argument seem to fit. And that is that originally these tokens represented commodities. And so let's say I have sheep, I own sheep, and they need to go out and go around, and I'm gonna, and graze. I don't want to do that, so I hire you to do that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sell 10 sheep to this guy that lives, far away, another city. But I need you to take them out and graze them for a while and then get them over there. And your payment will be whatever sheep during the season that reproduce. I'm just coming up with this top of my head. Whatever sheep reproduce above the 10, you get to keep. So how do I guarantee that if there's no writing, how do I guarantee that when you get over to the other city, you're supposed to deliver 10 sheep? Like how does that guy guarantee that I gave you 10 sheep in the beginning? Because you could easily go over there and just give him 5. Oh yeah, Josh said you get 5 sheep. Like how do you guarantee that? And so what they would do is they would take 5 or 10 tokens, let's say for 10 sheep, and they would put them inside of a clay ball, an empty clay ball, and seal it up, and it would harden. And sometimes they would imprint like a seal or something on it, but nonetheless, so you've got this sealed clay ball, and inside, ching, 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 10 tokens. So now you take that you take that clay ball with the 10 tokens with you, you go over there and you hand it to the guy, he breaks it open, counts 10, okay, you're supposed to get 10 sheep, whatever. I'm just coming up with this example. I have no idea if there's actually, I think that this is, but this is the idea behind it.
And I mean, the ball, all that's real.
Yes,
but what
that's
you're
right.
talking about
the actual scenario
right.
of 10 sheep going across to another city.
Got it.
I'm just trying to find something to make it fit. But the same, like that's how it was used. You've got 10 sheep. This determines that you're supposed to give 10 sheep. Okay. Well, what they did then eventually is they started, before they sealed them in the empty clay ball, the envelope they call it, they would take the tokens and impress them on the outside 10 times, right? Mm-hmm. So now then they'd seal them inside, ching, 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 ching. And what you would see is the impression of 10 of, let's say, little triangular shapes. And they would know inside of the ball were 10 tokens. So it was just a quick way to look at the outside without having to break it open. And it was a way that you could confirm, 10 on the outside, 10 on the inside. Well, eventually they realized, and again, this is over time, but not a lot of time. I think maybe 1,000 years. I'm pulling that from memory here, but it wasn't like a crazy long period of time, 100,000 years or something,
Right.
They realized that they didn't need the tokens on the inside anymore. They could impress it 10 times, and just smush the thing flat. And once it hardened in the clay, those 10 wedges, it worked, right? You could just look at them and you didn't need to crack it open. And so that process of being able to count, this is an economic thing. It's being used for recording purposes that way. That seems to be the process by which writing developed, is moving through these stages. So, writing, when it developed, again, it wasn't to write literature, it wasn't to do poetry or anything. It was for economic purposes, right? You're tabulating things and you're putting down different types of commodities on these tablets. And again, we have these tablets. You can go to the museum and see them. If you go out to the British Museum, I think they've got a bunch of them on display, or at least they did the last time I was there. And so that writing system, we have evidence of it developing in the last part of the 4th millennium. We think that it was Sumerian. There's good evidence, it seems, that it was Sumerian in its earliest stages. There's some phonetic arguments that are kind of complicated. But
real quick, so that I'm tracking, it goes from simple triangles, so to speak, not really a language.
Right.
And you're calculating commodities, most likely, like you said, sheep or whatever it might be, anything, cattle, don't matter. When did an alphabet type of thing, when did it go from, look, we realize when we're transferring information that is like a necessity, based on just putting marks on this clay. When did someone finally go, you know what, we can actually transfer not numbers, but words that we actually communicate verbally, orally, in the same way in a transmission? Is that in that same range?
So there's something called the rebus principle. And it took some time for this to happen. But let's say in English, here in America, we didn't have an alphabet. We just had pictures that we drew for every word, right? So let's say I drew a little shape of a shoe for a shoe, and let's say I drew a stick figure for a man, right? Well, eventually we might realize that, well, there's a guy over here named, John Schumann. And we might go, you know what? Shoe, man. Well, if I put these together, shoe and man, you could pronounce Schumann. Now, that doesn't mean that when you put those two together that you're talking about a shoe and a guy, right? A footwear and a person. You're using their phonetic values, shoe and man. Mm-hmm. to pronounce the last name Schumann. I'm trying to think of another good another example, like.
But initially, it's a symbol. It's not like
That's
an
right.
alphabet. Like we don't have an A, B, C, D yet.
It's not an alphabet. An alphabet is just a system of individual letters.
Right.
These are syllables.
Okay.
So it's not just the SH sound, it's the SHU sound, shoe, and MAN, man. So those are syllables. But that's called the rebus principle. So the example that I like to use, and I use it in my book, by the way, if people are interested in this, this is terrible, but
No,
oh well.
grab it. I think it's like a lot of people are checking out that work, actually.
Megan and I wrote this book called Learn to Read Ancient Sumerian for the Absolute Beginner. And it's a book that if you're interested in learning Sumerian, the earliest writing, I explain and she explains, this stuff in some detail. So it's actually a lot of fun. It's pretty cool just because this is the coolest part of the book to show when you talk about it, is the hand copies of Sumerian tablets, right? She did those by hand, and that's what Sumerian looks like when it's, in an inscription.
And those right there, are those syllables?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. Let me explain. So there are 3 ways. Each of those is an individual sign, if you can see those. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 signs in the top line.
On the black side.
That's right over here. So there are 4 individual signs. So the way that Sumerian works is each of those signs, each of those symbols, can have generally one of 3 different uses. And we've talked about 2 of them already with the shoe and the man. Mm-hmm. So it can just be a noun or a verb. It can be a word, a whole word. So for example, there's a boxy looking symbol that's A, and A2, and it means house. It's a boxy looking thing. So it's like the layout of a house, right? Or a song, S-A, nasalized G. It has the shape, it looks like a head, and song means head. Ka means mouth, and it's the song sign, but there are little hash marks by where the mouth would be to highlight the mouth. Okay. So those are all signs that, cuneiform signs, that mean individual words. But as you can hear, a, song, ka, those are all syllables as well. So there's the word for milk is ga, the word for sky is an, and the word for to build, the verb to build is do. So ga for milk, an for sky, do for build. You might say, why in the world did you just tell me those 3 things? Because the verb, let me build, is gandu. So do, you hear to build, it's like the base of the verb. Gandu means let me build, or I will build. But to write gandu in the same way that you would write Schumann, you take the sign for milk, the sign for sky, and the sign for build, do, and you put them all together. And it doesn't mean milk, sky, build. It means I will build, because it's using milk and sky, ga and an, phonetically to represent the sound gon, ga-an. So that's how writing developed, and that's how the cuneiform developed into this system, because it can mean individual words, but then it can also mean their phonetic values. So when you put them together, you can make longer words, and they don't mean they're individual, like word values, if that makes sense. So as an example, if you've ever heard of Zacharias Sitchin, Zacharias Sitchin wrote a book called The 12th Planet. He wrote a bunch of other books. It's actually on our shelf here somewhere. But he makes this mistake of seeing verbal forms in Sumerian, which are made up of several different signs, because you have the verbal base, but then you have these syllables that come before it. So ga, on, do, gan, on come before do. Well, you have mu-un, do, or mu-un, na, do, or whatever. Or mu-na-on, do. But anyway, those are all individual signs. Well, what he does is he looks at them and says, oh, so ga-on, do. So this is the milk in the sky which builds.
Milky Way.
Yeah, oh, it's the Milky Way. And you're like, wait a minute. That's not what this is. It's not 3 different words being put together. It's one verbal form. Schumann. It's Schumann. It's not footwear guy. Oh, so it's like the male form of footwear. No, it's Schumann. It's a guy's last name. Well, that's what's happening. It's using the rebus principle. And so he makes the mistake, I think probably because he doesn't know Sumerian, of reading individual words, and it's just one verbal form. But those are 2 of the 3 ways that Sumerian signs are used. The third is let's say I was talking to you about Enlil. And Enlil, he's really great, and he brought the flood, and Enlil, but you don't know who Enlil is. So I would say the god Enlil did X, Y, and Z. Well, by me saying the god before Enlil, I'm telling you that Enlil is a deity. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm doing that. Well, Sumerian has a way of doing that. They put the word God before a proper name or proper noun. That is a divine name. And that tells you that the name that's coming, this is the name of a deity. So they'll put the star sign, it actually is, just because it's one of the easiest to see.
That's the God symbol?
It's the God symbol. And you can see it now that you know that.
And real quick, while you're doing this, is this the oldest language we have that we know of that was written?
Yes.
Sumerian?
Yep. Sumerian.
Okay. Wow. So nothing's older that is written.
That's correct.
I mean, obviously there's orals, there's language spoke, but how long we don't know yet. I'm not going to say that people don't know, but I don't know that. But that's not your wheelhouse to say how long we've had languages. But
so if you can you see, is that clear? I can't tell.
Which one is it?
This first one here. It looks like a little starburst.
Illuminati. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
See,
Let me zoom in.
You see it here.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's cool.
And you can see it here. Are there other places that you can see it on this?
I don't see him.
All right, let's go back to another one, because this is cool. Once you can recognize the sign, then you can see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? So there's one here.
My name comes right after that. Holy crap.
There's one here. This is a broken one.
Oh, why is that broken?
Sign. Because this is a clay tablet, and they're taking a stylus and pressing into the clay to create wedges, which is what cuneiform means, wedge-shaped. So this one here, it probably, the clay got broken off right there.
Oh, I thought that was on purpose. Like they meant to...
No.
Okay.
No, it's just broken off. But there's one there, right? So now you know, this is called the dinger sign, dinger. But it's also read on, as in sky, right? But they would put this before a name. So here, this is a divine name, Nama. So Dinger, Nama, that tells you this is a divine name, right? This is Dinger Ba'u. So Ba'u is the name of a deity.
Wow.
So you know a little Sumerian already, right?
Yeah.
So that's called a determinative. And they say that because it determines what the next word is that's coming. So there are different types of determinatives. There's a river determinative. So they'll put the river sign, and the word that's next to it is the name of a river. There's one for wood. So they'll write nish, which is also the word for penis, which is pretty cool.
Interesting. Wood? Oh, it's got some like deep
Illuminati, baby.
Oh, so you're telling me, man, you got a woody? All right, I got you.
But they'll put nish in front of like a chair if it's made of wood.
Okay.
So nish guzah. Guzah is the name for chair, the word for chair. So nish guzah would be a wooden chair. they have city name determinatives. They have determinatives for professions. They'll put the word man in front of a profession. Anyway, the point is that that's another way that a cuneiform sign can be used. So it can be used as a noun, just by itself, like our sign for shoe. If we drew a shoe, that would be the word shoe. It could be used as phonetically as a syllable. And so shoeman, shoe and man, stick figure, whatever, we put them together, and it doesn't mean the manly shoe. It means we're reading these phonetically, shoeman. By the way, you see that all the time at graduations. If somebody says, my name is Francesca Stavrakopoulou, right? Well, if somebody doesn't know that name and they're going to read 100 different names at graduation, they'll say to you, hey, write out your name phonetically so that they don't mispronounce it. So when I wrote mine, I didn't write JOSHUA. I wrote JAH-SHOE-WAH, Joshua. So that's written phonetically. So shoe man would be writing shoeman out phonetically. Okay. So it can be used as a noun, can be used phonetically, or it can be used as a determinative, like the dinger sign or the other determinative.
This is really, really good. So while we have a couple minutes left, I want to ask, it sounds like language, written language, not just like, and it's cool that you showed us like mathematically, there were like no alphabetical or anything. There was no symbols language going on. Just triangular imprints saying, all right, 10 sheep, send that tablet with your man. That way he knows that you didn't rip him off when you get it, whatever. The same can be applied to written alphabetic language phonetically and whatnot, as you're describing here. I suspect its origins is just taking the next step of saying, okay, it's a little more complicated than just here's 10 sheep that you see at 10 marks. We need to make sure that they get my message safely. And
this is it's interesting that you bring that up, because there's a myth called Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata. And the story is, there's this trope that shows up in Sumerian literature several times, where you have the city of Uruk, the very popular city, and the city of Arata, which is supposed to be way out to the east. And they have a rivalry with each other. And so Enmerkar is the king of Uruk, which is where Gilgamesh was king, by the way. And Arata has its own king, right? And they have this competition in this story, Enmerkar and the Lord of Arata. They have a competition, who's going to be the cleverer of the two. And they have, I can't remember all the different things they compete with, like they ask essentially riddles to one another, but riddles that they have to physically solve. So one is, can you transport grain across these 7 mountains to reach me only using a net? And what, like, I can't remember exactly, but like he soaks the grain or something so that it starts to grow out. Like I'm not a agricultural guy, but does it like grow out?
I don't know.
Yeah, anyway, but it means that it could stay in the net because it had started to expand out of it anyway. But one of the things that is challenging is he asks him something, and the king of Uruk, Enmerkar, gives this really long answer, and it's too much for the messenger who's been doing the running back and forth to remember. So Enmerkar takes some clay and writes the message down.
They're telling you the myth of
how it got started.
Wow.
So when he goes, like he breeds it to, so it's pretty cool how, when he gives it to the Lord of Arata, it says it was all just nails to him. Which, if you think about how cuneiform looks, it looks like little nails. There's some debate about the word that's used there. It's Gog, and is that what is intended by it? But nonetheless, it's at least it means it was too confusing for him to read, which showed how the Lord of the king of Uruk, Enmerkar, was more clever than the Lord of Arata.
Well, you got to admit, I don't care who you are, someone who was smart enough to come up with this was a smart cookie.
But this is a great example. We don't just want to read Enmerkar and the Lord of Arat and say, oh, okay, Enmerkar, this king of Uruk, invented writing.
Right. No. It's more complex and...
But you know what? If it were in the Bible, people would have a huge problem with you saying that.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, whoa. It says here that Enmerkar invented writing. Yeah. Now, what evidence do you have that contradicts that?
So now we got a uphill climb with people that are just not, I think, not fairly treating other literature the way that we would.
Exactly.
We're trying to equally treat it the way we treat other literature.
That is exactly right.
So,
that is exactly right.
Thank you, Dr. Bowen. I appreciate it. This was fantastic.
Good.